So the next question is, Scott, what is your best strategy for getting to the root cause of the problem? I'm still struggling with this and I can't figure out what I need to work on with my clients. So how do you get to the root cause? Okay, so this is a loaded question. I'm going to do my best to try and answer this quickly as possible, or as more succinct as possible. So sure, the root cause thing gets thrown around a lot, and everybody knows therapists and coaches alike that we have to get to the root cause, which is really saying like the real core problem to why the symptoms, the client is experiencing those symptoms. But here's the thing I want you to consider, and I mentioned this during my last training, and it was definitely a great learning lesson for everybody. How are you going to know you actually get to the root cause? How can you really be sure? Now, most of the time when you do a thorough job of like the investigation phase and finding the parameters of what the problem is, you can get pretty close to what is known as a root cause, because you'll see a lot of unconscious moments. You'll have your client retrieve a lot of memories. There'll be a lot of emotion and things like that. But it doesn't necessarily mean you've found the exact root cause. So I gave up on this a long time ago when I was figuring out, okay, I've got to get to the root cause, but how do I know I actually have got there? So instead, all I'm doing is I'm asking my client about their problem enough until they can no longer consciously explain what the real problem is. That's how I know there's no more consciousness and trance will actually happen. I'm looking for a lot of unconscious moments. Now, if you're unsure what unconscious moments are, I'll leave some more videos below talking about what those things are. You can check those out. But realize this is, when you're looking for the root cause, you're never actually going to be able to find out what it is exactly. You can get pretty close to it. All you want to be looking for instead is unconscious moments and your unconscious resources and information and stuff like that. But also realize, like, when people talk about how to get to the root cause, what a lot of people fall into, and again, I'll include myself in that when I first started, was we make a lot of conclusions about what we believe everybody's root cause stems from. I'm sure you've heard this when like people will say, like they've heard it from gurus or whatever it is, and they'll say like all problems exist because of childhood trauma. Like all problems exist because of anxiety. That's an impossible conclusion to confirm. So when I stopped believing a lot of the conclusions that everybody was telling me, like there has to be a trance like this, trance has to look like this, therapy has to be done this way, has to be this technique, has to be this type of root cause, I was finding myself so locked into one place where it wasn't working. Nothing was happening. It was so hit and miss, and it just wasn't working for me. So when I went into therapy with my clients, my stop smoking clients as an example, no conclusions, none. I didn't go looking for the root cause. If I happened to get close to it, that's fine. I didn't conclude what the root cause was until I asked my client about their problem. I didn't know what type of trance they were going to go into. I didn't know what I was going to say, what strategy I was going to use, what technique I was going to rely on. And I went into the session almost like just blank mind. And what this allowed me to do was have so much more freedom to express myself as a therapist, and results were rapid. And I mean rapid. And the reason this is because when I stopped trying to do things to my clients, like apply a technique or apply a certain type of trance or apply a conclusion about the root cause, when I stopped doing that, I stopped putting pressure on myself to perform. I was so anxious and scared going into the sessions, and I would role play it in my head. I'd think, okay, if my client says this, I'm going to do this. If they do this, I'm going to do this. And then I'd get into the session and my mind would be totally blank. I wouldn't even remember what I was supposed to do, which is actually a good thing. But all the role plays I had in my head never went out that way. Clients never followed my 1, 2, 3, 4-step formula, never. So there was no point trying to get better at a formula or a rigid strategy, where instead I went into every session to find out what the root cause was. I started every session the same, asking a client, what's the problem? And whatever came out after that, I'd follow that sort of trail. I'd follow that sort of link to where this conversation was going. And through the conversation, I'm looking for unconscious moments. I'm listening for the knots that I call them knots that are connected to the problem, maybe what the real core problem is. But realize this as well. I hope this is still the same sort of subject. I'm not going too far off track here. Is clients will have more than one root cause. But again, we're not going to limit ourselves to knowing what the root cause is. You've just got to get as close to it as possible. But I found with a lot of my smokers, there was like 10 different things I had to solve in one session in order for the entire thing to be resolved. So, oh God, I have to remind myself of the question. A lot of it is this stuff. So how do you get to the root cause? Don't look for it, because now you're going to steer the conversation in the session the way that you want it to go, to try and find the conclusion that you think all problems exist from anxiety or something like that. And it gets very, very messy and very, very tricky to do that. So that's hopefully that answered the question. How do you get to the root cause? Stop looking for it and just go with whatever your client gives you. Stop concluding that all root causes are because of this. Don't conclude that clients only have one root cause, but also don't believe that root causes can actually be found, because you'll never know. It's not like you get to it and then the client says, you found the root cause, congratulations. It doesn't work like that. But you'll know you get close to a root cause things when your client has a breakthrough. And whatever that root cause is, whether I know what it is, even care what it is, and knowing my client has no idea what the root cause is, I can fix that, because now we're not attached to it being a certain way. So that's what I would do.